Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Now, as much as I love old PCs and old PC components, when we go back past say 2005, well, I really don't know all that much. To be honest, I love a good Pentium 4, a good Athlon, but when we start getting toward the earlier end of the 2000s and into the 90s, I've got to admit, yeah, my knowledge on processors and graphics cards is pretty vague. So today, what I thought I'd do anyway would be to crack open this old Windows 98 gaming PC. We could discover what the parts are together, see what they're capable of, and discover what is on what is essentially this time capsule of a PC. This has Windows 98 installed from what I'm told, and hopefully all of the components come from a time when, well, life was a bit simpler, computers were a bit more complicated, and yeah, that's all I can really say. Let's crack this thing open and see what exactly is inside, what's installed on the system, whether or not any games have been left on this thing. But first, I think we should probably clear out some of the dust, because by the looks of things, this hasn't been used since 1998 or whenever these components came out. But we'll discover all that right now. Let's crack this yellow custard-coloured beast open and discover the hidden contents within. Apart from the dust, this machine isn't actually that dirty internally. The case is pretty bad, but I've seen many newer PCs that are far grimier than this. Fans are usually the dirtiest, and that statement certainly rings true here. Dust also tends to sit at the bottom of the case and on top of drives too. Luckily, I bought this electric air duster a while back, which is ideal in situations like this. For any loose dust that doesn't blow away, it's best to finish the job with a microfiber cloth. If a PC is really dirty, I take the whole thing apart and clean everything individually, but this actually came up quite well. I also replaced a couple of screws that had gone walkabout over the years as well, which became apparent after the drive bay fell out as I was cleaning it. That brings us on to the specs. For the storage, we have a Maxtor D740X-6L IDE hard drive. This dates from around 2002 from what I could find online, and back then 20GB would have been plenty of space for the operating system and games. An 80GB version of this was used in a couple of high-end build guides I found from 2002, and this one was around $70 from what I can see. UK and other international prices are always harder to find for older parts, so I've stuck with US pricing wherever it's available. The Apollo power supply is harder to date, but judging by the Pentium 4 Ready logo, this also came out in the early 2000s. It's still going after 15 or 20 years, so it's certainly proven itself reliable. I think. I mean, at this point in the script, I haven't even turned the PC on yet, so it might blow up. Who knows? Underneath this pretty cool looking old school stock Intel cooler is a Celeron clocked at 1200 MHz. This is paired with 512 MB of RAM, which back in the day would have been more than enough, and you could have expected to pay upward of $100 for some configurations. The sort of money you could get 32 gigs for these days. The components sit on top of a QDI SX5EP-A socket 370 motherboard. One of my favourite parts of any PC build is of course the graphics card, and here we have a 32MB ATI Rage 128, or Rage Fury as Windows 98 identifies it as. Thanks to everyone on Twitter, by the way, who helped identify it as well. Back in the late 90s when it launched, this now unassuming piece of tech would have set you back maybe $200 or so from what I can tell. I'll have a separate video on this in the future where we'll go into more details and the performance. We've also got a network card in here too, so we'll connect this PC up to the internet to see how Internet Explorer 6 is treating us these days. I guess now we'll turn it on and see what, if anything, is installed on the drive. So that front fan might be clean now, but man is it noisy. Either the bearings are going or it's just always sounded like this. After all, older cases were far beefier, so a lot of the noise was always disguised by the enclosure. First up, it was straight into the BIOS to check CPU temps. Things were looking good, and I also took the opportunity here to confirm that USB peripheral support was enabled. Although plug and play seemed to work for the keyboard, I had to swap the good old Dell mouse out for this imposter, which installed as the system booted, along with any other drivers. Windows 98 also recognised my Corsair gaming keyboard right away as well, which was unexpected. Just look at that nostalgic sight. I remember back in 2001, when my primary school first got computers, I was the only kid whose family didn't have a PC, and I remember getting to this screen and then the desktop and not even knowing how to use the mouse. Crazy how kids now can just use PCs when they're like 2 years old. I must say Windows 98 certainly looks odd on a modern widescreen display though. The first thing I noticed was that we had Office 97 installed as well, which released when I was about 4, so that's always funny. And you know what that means. This is the first time we saw Clippy, who would go on to get a redesign for Office 2000 and then be eliminated entirely by Microsoft during the release of Office 2007, when even employees of Microsoft actually criticised it. I get why. I mean, look at that sarcastic face. As I sat and confirmed some specs in a device manager, I then started to wonder what else was installed on here. Diving into the classic start menu, I quickly noticed Paint Shop Pro 5. What I'm going to create here is exactly a replica of my first ever drawing in Paint Shop Pro back in the day. Look at that. Maybe I'll make this video's thumbnail with this software too. This 5.1 edition was actually released in 1998. Using the internet with this machine was next to impossible with the installed software Internet Explorer 6. Google search worked, but no web pages wanted to load. And of course, modern operating systems aren't really supported. I think some early versions of Opera actually do work, but there will be a follow-up Windows 98 video at some point because it's an OS that I really want to re-familiarise myself with, just for the fun of it. I'm also open to suggestions as to what you'd like me to try with this ancient OS too. Now, after messing around a bit more with the operating system, I came across a game menu where it seemed we actually had a few classics installed already. These included Lemmings, Duke Nukem, Quake and Doom. First of all, I fired up Doom 2 just to see if it would run, and there were no issues. I mean, Doom always runs on anything. A couple of the titles didn't start, but Theme Park, which is also a 1994 release, ran fine as well. In a naive moment, I went in search of my physical copy of San Andreas and whacked it into one of the CD drives. This took literally an hour to install, and when it finally did, the game didn't start due to lack of DirectX support from the card. Now obviously a ton of games came out between 1994 and 2004, so I plan to test some more and build up a nice physical games collection. I feel like we've barely scratched the surface in this video as well, but this was pretty much just an introduction into my world of Windows 98, as I want to really get to know it properly instead of trying to bring you a video filled with information that I'm not too sure of yet. Even so, I hope that cracking open this case hit you with a ton of nostalgia like it hit me, and even though I'm a total retro gaming noob, I hope to upgrade this machine a little bit and perhaps tidy up the custard-coloured case as well. This is the start of my ultimate Windows 98 gaming journey, and I hope you can join me along the way. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this one, leave a like on it down below. Leave a dislike if you didn't. Let me know the first piece of hardware you remember ever getting for your PC, whether it was before Windows 98 or after, in the comments below. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and hopefully I'll see you all in the next one.